Do you hate baseball?
No, I like baseball. I just never understood how you guys can spend so much time discussing it. I mean, I've been to games, but I don't memorize who played third base for Pittsburgh in 1960.
Don Hoke. Beat you.
See, that's exactly what I mean.
You're right, I suppose. I mean, I guess it is childish, but when I was about 18 and my dad and I couldn't communicate about anything at all, we could still talk about baseball. No, that was real.
I'm not crying. You're crying. Welcome back. The lack of Major League Baseball has a lot of us feeling nostalgic about America's pastime. By the way, City Slickers, a great watch if you need something to get you through this lull in sports. Well, hope springs eternal today, and talk of Major League Baseball's return is heating up. Players, league owners, and officials are floating the idea of putting all 30 teams in and around Phoenix, Arizona this season. Ballparks would be empty. All sides held a telephone call to talk about the paths forward this week for the season, already delayed due to the coronavirus pandemic. This is all according to sources cited by the AP. Well, how do the players feel about this? One anonymous Mets player told the New York Post and writer Mike Puma, quote, "It's the desert. Stuff doesn't live there, it dies there." Another Met told the Post, "That's hell," in reference to Arizona. Meanwhile, Cy Young winner and Red Sox ace Chris Sale says, quote, "I don't know if I could look at my kids through a screen for 4 to 5 months." He told that to sports writer Chris Cotillo, who added that Sale does think there is a right way for the season to get started, but perhaps it's not in Arizona. So we'll see Major League Baseball sometime. Will it be anytime soon? Let's talk about this with our guests. Joining us now, first is Randy Roberts. He is the co-author of a great book called War Fever, Boston Baseball in America and the Shadow of the Great War. He's also a distinguished professor of history at Purdue University. Also with us, Dan McLaughlin. He's a senior writer at the National Review. He's also known as the Baseball Crank if you follow Twitter. He wrote a column on Randy's book about the parallels between the Spanish flu pandemic, the Great War in 1918, 102 years ago, World War I, and what we're seeing about now in 2020. That's how I learned about Randy's book, which is a great read. I can't say this again, like City Slickers, something to bide your time. I highly recommend Dan's columns as well. And lastly, we have co-hosts and Newsmax TV's Mr. Baseball, the co-host of American Agenda, Bob Sellers. Bob was drafted by the Royals in 1973, but opted for a college career at Virginia instead, and he's here with us today to round out the lineup. All right, guys, let's keep this pretty snappy like a game of pepper. Let's go to you, Randy, first. What do you think about this season in Arizona?
I'm looking forward to any baseball season. You know, one of the things that happened in 1918 is we try to generate things, move things up a little bit too fast, and we had a third wave of the pandemic. But I think, you know, baseball means that America's back working again. It means that America is America again.
Well, Dan, thank you for writing that column and pointing me to Randy's book. Both are great. What do you think about this idea of a Major League season played entirely in Arizona?
Not the same as having the teams playing in your own hometown, but one of the great advantages of TV and the internet that weren't really around in the same way in 1918 is that the players can play in one place and the fans can watch them in another. I think the country has to get back to work. It's going to be gradual, but, you know, expecting the ball players who are a smaller, you know, younger and healthier set of folks to get back to work first so that other people who are stuck at home can watch them. I think it's a wonderful thing. Maybe they're not ready for it quite yet, but I think they can be ready for it perhaps before the rest of the country is ready to open up.
Bob, how about you?
I'm on board with that. I'd like to see them play. It is hot in Arizona, but hey, these guys are getting paid a lot of money to play a game that we all want to play for a living, so they should be happy to go out there and do it.
Yeah, Randy, let's talk a little bit more about your book and how the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic and World War I impacted the Major League season, and particularly Babe Ruth's career. And I wish we had more time to talk about the other two characters in the book, Muck and Whittlesley. We'll have to do another interview about this. But at the time, Babe Ruth was the best pitcher in the majors, right? But, you know, what happened is because of a loss of so many players, he was kind of forced to be an outfielder, right?
Exactly right. He was the best left-handed pitcher in baseball anyway. And, you know, Babe Ruth was kind of a circus act. And back in that time, 1918, it was still small ball, Ty Cobb. You choke up on the bat, slash a hit, try to get on base, work your way around, low-scoring games. Nobody swung for the fences. But then suddenly Babe Ruth shows up as he's a pitcher, but they have to use him as a batter. And from the very beginning, he choked. I mean, he was way down on the knob of the bat, wide swing, miss it by 2 feet. But when he connected, it just, nobody had ever seen anything like it. It's the birth of a new age in the game.
Right, and today we hear about launch angles and bat velocity and these things. All the players are swinging for the fences nowadays. Dan, you know, it's quite stunning. You wrote a great follow-up column, too, that I read about how many Major League players were impacted and you know, basically abandoned their careers to go fight in World War I and in World War II as well. A much different scenario than we'd see today.
Yeah, and it's, you know, often we forget, particularly the First World War, because it's drifted further from our memory. But there really were not just a lot of great players who went off, you know, missed years and came back, but there were guys who went off and were never the same players again. There were, you know, in the Second World War, there were guys who came back with frostbite. So, I mean, as I detailed, there were a number of Babe Ruth's Red Sox teammates in 1918 who went off to war and were never the same again. You know, two of the very best pitchers in the two men who are tied for the National League all-time record in wins, Grover Alexander, Christy Mathewson, were never the same again after World War I.
Yeah, it's hard to think about. And Bob, here we have players complaining about Arizona being too hot.
Yeah, I know. You know, Ted Williams missed 5 years of his career, 3 in World War II, 2 in the Korean War. And this is a guy that hit 400. When he left to go to the war, I think he hit in the 340s. He missed 3 years in his prime, came back and hit in the 340s again. So these guys that are complaining, I mean, Ted Williams would have had another 150 home runs. To me, I grew up in Northern Virginia during a time that Williams was manager of the Senators. So I see somebody like that. He didn't complain. He felt like he was doing his duty.
Yeah, that's true. It's a different era for sure. Thanks to Dan McLaughlin, Randy Roberts, and Bob Sellers. And you can catch Bob and Allison Maloney on American Agenda coming up at 1 p.m.